Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. There was a lot of news going on, and we'll get to it in just a minute. But first, a bigger story that we think will shape the country our grandchildren will inhabit, maybe more than any other. The nation's immigration laws are breaking down before our eyes. The people charged with enforcing those laws are instead destroying them. Yesterday, we told you about Chicago, the city of Chicago, and its new plan to give ID cards to illegal immigrants. Those official IDs will allow non-citizens to vote. That's against federal law, not to mention the very idea of democracy. America is supposed to be run by Americans. That's the point of it. But politicians in Chicago are pushing to subvert that. If you're looking for a foreign influence scandal, and everyone in here in D.C. is looking for one, you got it, because it's happening in Chicago right now. Foreign citizens will be electing our political leaders. Chicago Alderman Amaya Pawar came on this show last night and tried to tell us that it was our imagination. None of this is happening. Illegal immigrants, he said, can't vote because in Illinois you have to prove you're a citizen in order to register to vote. Watch him tell you that.
In order for someone to register to vote, they would have to sign an affidavit and present a birth certificate, a passport, a social security card, and potentially this. So you'd still need a second form of ID.
So you're saying that in order to register to vote in the state of Illinois, you need to produce evidence of citizenship. Is that your claim?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we rarely play tape of people who've been on the show when they're not here to respond because it seems like bad sportsmanship. You ought to be able to respond directly to a claim against you. But we're replaying that because it so perfectly crystallizes the dishonesty in our public conversation on this subject. You just heard an elected official look right into the camera and tell you a lie. Not once, but 3 times. That's not true, what he said. You do not need proof of citizenship to register to vote in the state of Illinois. We checked. Everyone who lives there knows this. You just need proof of an address and an ID, exactly like the one the city of Chicago is giving away to illegal immigrants. He's encouraging them to take. Informed people who say anything other than that are lying. And they're lying because they want illegal aliens to vote, but they don't want you to know about it or complain. That is called fraud. Meanwhile, in Oakland, California, maybe Mayor Libby Schaaf is taking the side of illegal aliens over American citizens, but maybe to her credit, she's doing it right out in the open. She's trying to sabotage federal immigration enforcement. She issued a public warning to illegal immigrants in Oakland last weekend. She told them of an impending ICE raid so they could go into hiding and avoid federal agents. It's like telling bank robbers the cops are on the way. Who is she protecting by doing that? Well, we have brand new numbers on that question. According to information supplied to this program by ICE, 864 illegal aliens, criminal aliens, and public safety threats remain at large in Oakland. These are exactly the people the mayor is warning before the authorities get there. We'll just give you a couple examples. One is a Honduran citizen who has been arrested multiple times for cocaine trafficking and, by the way, for having sex with a minor. Another, from Mexico, has been arrested and convicted for carrying a loaded gun, for DUI, drug smuggling. Both of these guys have been deported from the U.S. multiple times. They've come back every time. They've been allowed to do that because Democratic politicians want them to stay here because, you know the answer, each one of these people, no matter how revolting, is a potential vote for them. That's the bottom line. Across the country, Democrats have given up on the middle class. They're not trying to fix your problems. They don't care. They don't share your concerns. They're not pretending to. They're the party of foreign voters now, many of them illegal. Democrats argue from the House floor that immigration law, the laws they passed by their body, the lawmaking body, those laws should be ignored or nullified. Anyone who disagrees is shouted down with slurs. It happens on this show all the time. Kansas, for example, has a law requiring proof of citizenship for voter registration. Who wouldn't support that? Non-citizens are not allowed to vote for federal office. Period. It's a federal law. Well, the ACLU is suing. You think they'll sue the mayor of Oakland for siding with MS-13 over American citizens? Don't hold your breath. Chris Kobach is the Secretary of State of Kansas, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Kobach, thanks for coming on.
Great to be with you, Tucker.
So I just want to be totally clear on this because, and I hate because I really think people ought to have a chance to respond to what you say about them. I'm sorry the alderman's not here, but we had a long conversation with him last night, and he told us 3 times. He said, look, I'm an expert on electoral law in the state of Illinois. You have to prove you're a citizen of the country in order to register to vote. Is that true?
That is false. Anyone who studies this issue knows there are only 4 states where the laws require you to provide proof of citizenship when you register to vote. And those states are Kansas, Arizona, Alabama, and Georgia. And of those 4, only Kansas and Arizona have fully implemented the law. The other 2 states are in the process of starting to implement it.
So just to be clear, what you do need in every state is a government ID, a universally recognized ID. And that's the one thing that's kind of hard for illegal aliens to get because they're not supposed to be here. So when government gives them an ID that is sufficient for voter registration, how are they not abetting voter fraud?
Well, it is absolutely abetting voter fraud. And, you know, the amazing thing is, of course, in the other 46 states, you don't need to provide proof of citizenship. All you need to do is check a box that says, I am a U.S. citizen. And we have found hundreds of cases all over the country. We've had expert witnesses look at Kansas, and it could be as high as 18,000 aliens on our voter rolls. In other states, it's probably in the 6 figures or more. But the point is, people are doing this all the time, sometimes intentionally, sometimes the non-citizens are doing it unintentionally. They can't even read what it is they've just signed, or they didn't pay attention to it. And then they start getting mail from the candidates saying, hey, you're a registered voter. Don't forget to vote for me, and don't forget to vote on August 7th or whatever the date is. So if they're registering and they're voting.
But why wouldn't that make a difference in elections? I mean, clearly the Democratic Party is abetting this. They're doing this on purpose. They're printing these IDs at government expense, public expense, giving them to illegals and letting them register to vote. I mean, why is this not an electoral strategy? It looks like that.
It certainly looks that way. And it does seem that many in the Democrat Party, hopefully not all, seem to think that it's okay if aliens vote. And yeah, maybe they shouldn't be, but heck, it helps the Democrat Party anyway. Some of them have talked like that, and I think it's appalling. Look, only Americans are allowed to vote in these elections. You win or lose by persuading Americans that your policies are right. The idea that we would try to replace or outweigh American voters by bringing in foreign voters is outrageous.
Yeah, that's the foreign influence scandal. So you're in the middle of a lawsuit over something related to this.
Yeah. Yeah, so the ACLU has kind of declared war on election security laws like ours in Kansas. And this war is something that is outrageous. They're making ridiculous arguments, like it's an unconstitutional burden for you to reach into your file cabinet at home and find your birth certificate. Or they're claiming that the National Motor Voter Law of 1993 somehow created a special privilege. If you get your license at the DMV, you don't have to prove citizenship, even though the law doesn't say that. So they're crazy arguments, but we're fighting them in court next week.
Yeah, well, I hope it's really clear to our audience what the point of all this is, because it is clear. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Acting ICE Director Thomas Holman spoke frankly about what Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf did when she warned of the impending raids in her city. Watch.
What she did is no better than a gang lookout yelling police when a police cruiser comes in the neighborhood, except she did it to the entire community. I mean, it's beyond the pale. I've been doing this for 34 years, and this is a whole new low to intentionally warn criminals that law enforcement's coming.
John Yoo is a professor at Bolt Law School at UC Berkeley and was Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President Bush, and he joins us tonight. John, thanks for coming on. So I think it's allowed, I think states, my understanding is, do not have the obligation to enforce federal law, but are they allowed to subvert it?
No, and I think the Constitution and the Supreme Court are quite clear. Immigration law is the sole preserve of the federal government. And so the federal government has the right to enforce its laws. The federal government can't commandeer or compel state officers to help them, but state officers cannot impede or obstruct federal law. We had a civil war about this. This is what the Civil War was really about, was whether state officials could block national federal laws.
So, I mean, without, not to draw too fine a point on it, but I mean, you often hear the left say this is a fascist administration. If it's such a fascist administration, why aren't they doing anything about this at all?
Well, first of all, it's not fascist to want to obey the federal laws passed by the people we elected in Congress. That's the way our system works. If state mayors and state governors oppose the Trump administration's immigration priorities, then our Constitution sets up a system. You go and elect new members of Congress, and they change the law.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for that. So what about, it's pretty clear that the state of California, the city of Chicago, are making it easier for people here illegally to vote in our elections, which is a crime, federal elections. Why doesn't the U.S. government do something about that?
Well, I think, take the situation mentioned here in Oakland. You also have the situation with Rahm Emanuel in Chicago. You have mayors who are encouraging the subversion of federal law. They are coming very close to committing obstruction of justice. Obstruction of justice is corruptly impeding or obstructing federal officers who are trying to carry out their legal duty. So if the mayor, for example, if mayors are trying to get people to vote who aren't supposed to vote, or as in Oakland, if you have a mayor who's trying to warn people that federal officers are coming to carry out federal law, I think you're coming very close, if not stepping over the line, to obstruction of justice.
It sure seems that way. I hope others in Washington agree with you. Thank you for that context. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Tucker.